Am I live? Red screen. Red line goes across the screen again. I'll let you know that I'm live. Hi. Um, Jesse Ventura considers a 2020 run for the presidency. I'm Bernie Bro, and I'm here to give you my spin on it. As most of you know, if you keep up with politics, it's not always about Democrats and Republicans. And sometimes there are people from outside the two-party system that makes it on the news. One of the best known current independents right now is Bernie Sanders, who was the 2020 presidential candidate, who just recently suspended his campaign. Um, others, the Ralph Nader, who ran in the past for the presidency. Um, Other people comes to mind like um, Roseanne Barr, who turned out to be a right wing nutcase, but when she was on the left, she ran for the presidency back in 2012. Um, there are notable others that decided to take a jab for the White House. We have Jesse Ventura now considering a presidential run. Now, we all know Jesse Ventura as the wrestler, and then he decided to run for governor of Minnesota in 1998, and he won. And he won with the Ross Perot's Reform Party, and to try to take a try to be a cut above the two party duopoly that exists. And it's cliche, but sometimes cliches are true. And Jesse Ventura calls out on the two party system all the time and the bullshit that they perpetuate. And even if you're firmly on the Democratic Party camp or firmly on the Republican Party camp, I don't know why you would be, but if you are so dedicated to the two party um, arrangement that exists, surely you have to also acknowledge that people on your side within your party, if you're a Democrat, you know there are fellow Democrats who are corrupt. If you're a Republican, you know that there are fellow Republicans who are corrupt. And honestly, the majority in both parties are corrupt as heck fire. Um, and Jesse Ventura decided he was not going to have that anymore. And he said he ran as a populist with libertarian leanings, from what I can take. And some people went from within the liberal establishment in Minnesota were not too keen on him at first. But I have a dear friend of mine who that lived in Minnesota at the time he was the governor. He told me he didn't vote for Jesse Ventura initially, but he was content and very happy with Jesse Ventura. Being a gay man, this individual saw, more protections for the LGBTQ community, while Jesse Ventura was the governor. So there are leftist creds that he has, and for in the late 1990s, early 2000, to be pretty aggressive about being for gay rights was political suicide. Even a lot of liberals were a little tepid on it. Um, Jesse Ventura turned out to be a pretty damn good governor. Um, and he was hoping that the Reform Party could supplant or be a major player to try to straighten out the two party mess that we're in this country. In 2000, Jesse Ventura's wing of the Reform Party split from the Reform Party because of the Pat Buchanan presidential campaign. Pat Buchanan got the presidential nomination for the Reform Party, and that was considered controversial, considering that Pat Buchanan, um, his politics is pretty damn controversial. Uh, what Pat Buchanan is a paleo conservative, and there's a lot to disagree with Pat Buchanan on social issues. There's a world to disagree with Pat Buchanan, and he supported a lot of bad dictators over the years. Strongman. He's made comments that were, if not flat out racist, racially insensitive. And there is speculation about his his views on things like Holocaust revision and the Israeli lobby controlling our politicians. That sort of thing just didn't. I mean, whatever side of the fence you're on, that's really kind of fucked up thinking. Some of Pat Buchanan's better points is the opposition to the neoconservative wars. That I can't take away from him. He's correct on that. He's correct on trade, but he's fucked up in so many other issues that Jesse Ventura was like, and his people were just like, nah, can't have that. Um, I guess over the years, he eventually moved to Mexico and I guess lived off the grid, and he's his own man in a lot of ways. I would say if I have a criticism of Jesse Ventura in 2020, not that it's necessarily wrong to be a conspiracy theorist, but I myself am not a 9/11 truther, and I just have trouble um, believing that even the shittiest of our American politicians and even our covert agencies will allow the planes to fly into the World Trade Center to create a crisis. I just don't want to believe that. And I'm inclined to believe that 9/11 was what it was, and it was just some pieces of shit fanatics from halfway across the ocean um, attacking attacking the U.S. And that's to me what it was. Bearing in mind that I still to this day think that George W. Bush is a war criminal and a piece of shit, and Dick Cheney was a bigger piece of shit than George W. Bush, and they need to be behind bars. And of course Jesse Ventura feels the same way. The Bush and Cheney are war criminals. I digress. But I admire Jesse Ventura for being very critical of the two-party system and being very, very consistent about it. I mean, there, I mean, yeah, he does have admiration for, for maybe the occasional Republican who's independent thinking, sort of like a Ron Paul type. He's expressed admiration for, and he's expressed admiration for people like even Bernie Sanders, who, as an independent, ran as a Democrat. And Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders has that in common. They're both, even though they both have mingled in the two-party system, for all intents and purposes, Bernie Sanders is an independent. Ron Paul is an independent, and Jesse Ventura has been consistently independent in his mindset most of these years. Um, and I agree with his critique of the two-party system. I like the fact, and speaking of Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul, I like the fact that Jesse Ventura is sort of the candidate that can kind of link people with a left of center, social democratic, progressive mindset with people who thinks more along the libertarian line, or even some of the more reasonable, softer paleo conservatives that are closer to the libertarian line of thinking. Um, with certain broad themes where everybody kind of overlap between reasonable soft paleo conservatives, libertarians, and left leaning social democratic types, which, things like being opposed to these neocon wars abroad, um, things like the drug war here at home, the military industrial complex, the clampdown on domestic civil liberties, support for freedom of speech, and doing it in a way where the libertarians and the paleo conservatives do not want any part of the authoritarianism of the religious right and the movement conservatism that's the mainstream of the Republican Party, or the progressive left's social democratic line of thinking, people who reject political correctness and the identity politics and the was the intersectionality in a way which is actually turns the Democratic Party to a party of regressive leftists. So Jesse Ventura can kind of link these people together, which is a good thing. And whenever Jesse Ventura is on television or interviewed, I mean, if he he's the kind of person that could win the admiration of people who are fans of the Young Turks online and people who would be fans of Infowars. And individuals are individuals, and they're going to be like persnickety people on both sides that they're of that movement that's within social media that Jesse Ventura see can kind of get people to find common ground. Well, Jesse Ventura is very critical of Donald Trump. He's very critical of Joe Biden. Gee, I wonder why. Um, because you got two men who are kind of a bigoted, wealthy types. Joe Biden's a bigoted, wealthy man who pretends to be woke and liberal, and Donald Trump is a bigoted, wealthy man that he puts on the dog whistles. He puts on the dog whistles for the really out there people on the far right. Even though he may not necessarily go as far as they would. But that in a way makes him no different from any other Republican running for president in any other given time. But Jesse Ventura is thinking of running as a Green Party candidate or maybe running as an independent. Now, recently I listened to YouTube. It was a YouTube broadcast, I believe, of Howie Hawkins of the Green Party offering to Bernie Sanders that he be willing to step down as the Green Party candidate if Bernie Sanders was willing to run. And I'm sorry to say, I don't think that Bernie Sanders is going to do that. Um, Although I wish he would. Um, Jesse Ventura wrote a letter recently to the Green Party that he would be happy to be the Green Party candidate. Um, right now, as it stands, I'm planning to vote for the Green Party no matter what, whether it's Howie Hawkins, Darius Hunter, or whomever, or Jesse Ventura. Um, I can't I can't look at Joe Biden or Donald Trump and think I have to make a lesser evil choice because in the words of the late Frank Zeidler, the former socialist mayor of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it's not the lesser of two evils; it's the eviler of two lessers. And I just can't quite go there, not at all. So anyway, I just wanted to lay that out for y'all about Jesse Ventura um, doing a run for the presidency or seriously thinking about it. I personally like Jesse Ventura. I've always respected him, and he's for the things I'm for. I mean, he's for. I mean, he's a civil libertarian. He's opposed to capital punishment. He favors single payer Medicare for all. He opposes these corporately managed trade agreements. He's for the legalization of marijuana and pretty much to decriminalize. And I don't know to how much he wants to decriminalize, but he favors the decriminalization of other drugs and wants to get us out of these crazy neocon wars. And you got to remember, he's a veteran, and and as I said, I just think Jesse. I would be proud to vote for Jesse Ventura in 2020. The only way that Jesse Ventura runs that I with due respect, I wouldn't be able to vote for him if somehow Bernie Sanders got the Democratic nomination, because it's not a foregone conclusion that Joe Biden will be the nominee. He is the nominee, but there is a convention that's going to take place. Whether it takes place in an actual traditional convention or whether they do it on the internet because of the COVID crisis and the social distancing. But if Bernie Sanders is somehow the nominee for president for the Democratic Party, with due respect, I would have to choose Bernie Sanders over Jesse Ventura with nothing personal against Jesse Ventura. And I would still be okay with Jesse Ventura running because I believe we should have as many choices as possible on the ballot. I don't care. I mean, I don't care what ideological flavors exist out there. In a true democracy, we should not have to sit there and settle for the lesser of two evils. And to do so, to always just choose between the Democrats and Republicans as if that's all there is. Well, I'm going to share you a quote from David McReynolds, the great peace activist from the Socialist Party USA, and when he said the difference between a liberal and a radical. This applies to the two-party system. A liberal and a radical would be put in prison and be subjected to death. 99 times out of 100, the radical would be trying to escape. And even though 99 times out of 100, that radical would die, there's that 1% chance the radical will survive. 100 times out of 100, the liberal will die because he or she can't decide which is superior, dying by being being hung or a by a firing squad. And choosing between a firing squad and being hung, you're just agonizing which is the lesser, which is the more humane way to die, and that's all they can see beyond. And a radical will be like, no, hell with that. Try to get out of here. If I had to choose between being shot or being hung, why not try to just not be shot or hung at all? Just try to get out of there. So I kind of botched up the David McReynolds little story anecdote, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. At least I hope y'all do. Um, but anyhow, that's what I have to say. And feel free to comment on this channel, good, bad, or indifferent. I would love to have a conversation with you, and also take the time and hit that subscribe button, and so you can be able to listen to me rant and rant away. I'm Bernie Bro. Have a great day, and take care.